Okay. Welcome once again, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the first session of SCBNA's public engagement series with the Nature Record. My name is Bernie Traversari, and I am the Director of Operations and Programs for the Society for Conservation Biology North America. Before we dive into today's session, I just wanted to give a brief introduction of our engagement series, the Nature Record, and also go through a couple of housekeeping items for the rest of today's presentation. So, Philip, you don't mind going to the next slide? I just wanted to start with a quick introduction to SCBNA for those of you that are not familiar with our organization. SCBNA is a professional society dedicated to advancing the science and practice of conserving Earth's biological diversity. We do this primarily by supporting anyone and everyone engaged in conservation, and we do that by offering professional development opportunities, research and publications, and also by hosting our biannual North American Congress for Conservation Biology, the next iteration of which will take place this year in July, and I will talk more about it at the end of today's session. So our public engagement series is part of the professional development opportunities that we offer through SCBNA, and it is being developed in conjunction with the Nature Record and through the work of our policy committee. Okay, Phil, do you want to go to the next slide? So a very brief introduction to the Nature Record, and I will let the rest of our presenters today go into a bit of a more in-depth introduction. But the Nature Record is a national initiative bringing together knowledge, storytelling, and public participation to elevate the role of nature in the U.S. As part of SCBNA's role supporting the Nature Record, we will be hosting a total of 7 public engagement sessions throughout the next few months. The first 2 of those will provide a brief overview of the initiative, and the other 5 sessions will allow for an opportunity for attendees to learn more about the contents of each chapter of the Nature Record and also provide feedback to chapter authors. I will also mention those feedback sessions at the end of today's presentation, and I will add a link to the chat so that you can look at all of this information online as well. Okay. So last slide before we dive into today's presentations. I just wanted to go through a couple of quick housekeeping items. The first one, Phil, if you don't mind clicking again, is live transcripts. So we are recording today's presentation for future viewing, but unfortunately, I am not able to record a live transcript throughout today's presentation. So if you do want to have one, I encourage you to click on the button at the bottom of your screen. Well, do you mind going once again? In addition to that, the chat function will be available for the entirety of today's presentation, and it will become particularly important once we reach our Q&A session. Myself and members of the Nature Record will be monitoring the chat as questions come in, and we'll be moderating it once we reach the Q&A session. And then, Phil, okay, perfect. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that you do have access to your reactions button at the bottom of the screen that will also be useful during the Q&A session. But also, if you see something that is interesting to you or that you want to react positively to during today's presentation, please feel free to use the reaction button as well. Okay. That is it for me. I just wanted to quickly thank all of today's presenters from the Nature Record. Thank you so much for being here today to share the incredible work that you're doing on behalf of North America's conservation community. And thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with you on this initiative.
Great, thank you, Bernie. It's really exciting to be with you all, and I want to just thank again Bernie Anderson and the whole SCB North America team for all of your engagement and care and coordination that went into pulling together this engagement series. We know these conversations are absolutely critical and important to the work, and they don't happen on their own. So thanks to the teams on both sides here. We really, really appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today as we are opening this public engagement series for the Nature Record. I'm Heather Tallis. I serve as the Secretariat Chair for the Nature Record. And we're here today to talk about its work, the first comprehensive assessment of nature and nature's benefits in the United States. So I'm going to give some background and history of the initiative, and then Phil will go into much more detail about the work underway, as well as Tessa giving some more background on the process that we're undertaking now and your critical roles in engaging with us. So, to set the stage here, I know you all know very well that we do know a lot about nature in the United States, what's going on with nature, how it's changed over time. We all experience and have increasing opportunities to engage with the millennia of indigenous knowledge that's been developed and continues to thrive here, complemented more recently by centuries of scientific research across many, many disciplines in many specific places on many topics and themes. So obviously, we know a lot, and all of that knowledge tells us that a lot is changing and increasingly rapidly in some cases. I imagine you all see these changes in your day-to-day lives yourselves. I know many of you are studying these changes and importantly, adding to our understanding of what's going on and why those changes matter in different ways to our lives. Of course, outside and beyond these knowledge communities, there's been increasing recognition of the significance of these changes, deepening recognition that nature is not simply a backdrop to the other things that we care about in our daily lives, but rather an absolutely essential part of the systems that build our communities, that drive our economy, and that contribute to what any one of us considers important to our well-being. But of course, all of this information is very disjointed and scattered. It's in silos, it's in different places, it's in different worldviews, it's in different disciplinary structures, and very difficult to comprehend and understand across the wide array of what we know across the United States. We've also had, of course, in the last several years, explosions of new kinds of data, big data, and the real emergence of AI, changing the ways we think about and use this information. We simply, at this point, do not have a clear picture of what all of this means taken together and why the changes that we see in nature matter across a wide range of interests. So I know you all are aware of this, but this disjointedness is not only frustrating and challenging from an individual perspective, but causes real and meaningful challenges for decision makers at all scales and of all kinds. Whether someone is trying to make a decision about their local community's reaction plans for the latest natural disaster, or a business is trying to chart a different course for their sustainability, or a national government is trying to craft a plan for responding broadly to emerging realities. These partial views can really undermine what seems like a good idea. And the perception that there's not consensus or a clear understanding of what's going on from the broad knowledge community can actually derail or fully paralyze policy processes. Jane and I had, we won't call it the opportunity, to see this firsthand in the last administration in real important conservation policy processes where well-meaning decision makers wanted to move and really felt hamstrung by the lack of clear consensus from the scientific community. So it really matters that there's a clear message and a clear understanding of what we know about what's going on with nature in the United States. So the nature record was created specifically to help address some of these challenges and to bring together the first comprehensive knowledge assessment of nature and nature's benefits across the United States. Next slide. So the scope of the nature record is to deliver this first comprehensive assessment and a set of companion products that help translate the findings into actionable, usable knowledge. We know assessments on their own are incredibly important and powerful and often can be hard to act on and use in practice if you're not a scientist or a knowledge user on a regular basis. So this set of companion products is really critical to helping take what we learned from this assessment and put it into the hands and minds of anyone who wants to use it. The broad scope of this assessment is to assess the state, trends, and future options for U.S. lands, waters, wildlife, ecosystems, and the benefits that they provide to our economy, our health, the climate, our cultures, environmental justice, and national security. So a very broad scope, but one that very intentionally shines a light on both the changes that are happening in nature and their significance to several different aspects of our society and our communities. Next slide. So how is all of this going to come to life? We are charging towards what we hope to be the release of the full assessment this fall. So at the beginning of the last year of this first effort. But of course, the effort started quite a while ago now with a federal effort in 2022. That was called the National Nature Assessment and was launched with very strong support from many federal agencies through the U.S. Global Change Research Program. And there were really, really strong efforts for a couple of years by over 170 federal and non-federal authors working through multiple important and broad public engagement periods. Some of you probably contributed, and for that we are incredibly thankful, and through multiple formal tribal consultation processes. That process led to the development of initial drafts of the assessment. But then, as many of you are probably aware, at the turn of administration early last year, federal support for the effort was ended, and there was a lot of enthusiasm and support from the community to continue to complete the assessment outside of the federal government. So that's when the efforts were pivoted and the nature record was formed to continue the efforts that had been started and underway by that really important set of non-federal authors. So we're coming now to a really important point in the timing of this whole process where that work has coalesced towards full drafts that are about to go for formal peer review by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine, and also back to the public again for another round of important public engagement and comment. So that's our overall timing, aiming to bring this assessment to life and to release by this fall. And the companion products, as I mentioned, are a really critical parallel set of pathways going alongside the development of the knowledge assessment throughout this process. We've already seen the release of the first companion product last year, a poetry anthology that Phil will share more about, and there are several other products that are already in the works and several more that will likely emerge in the year ahead. So these will roll out throughout the process, again, giving different perspectives and different angles and means of communication for the key findings of the assessment. Next slide. So who is making this happen now as a non-federal effort? This is a high-level view of the governance that we've established to help keep these efforts moving and provide a really embedded effort across the broad knowledge community in the United States. Very, very importantly, the authors are the core of this effort, and around 150 non-federal authors who started at the beginning have continued, and a few more have been brought on board to fill gaps in the last year. Those authors are driving the work of the content and the engagement and the assessment and itself, and collaborating with a key set of partners who are helping us develop companion products and bringing more perspectives and more pathways to impact to the work. Phil Levin, many of you know as the director, really sits at the core of these efforts, coordinating the development of the pathways with the authors and our partners, and working closely with the Secretariat, a group we've developed that you'll see specifically in the next slide, that is the key decision-making body that's ensuring the credibility and transparency and rigor of the assessment. Our institutional home is the Resources Legacy Fund, and we are about to announce this month an advisory board of around 20 people who will more broadly embed leadership and advising for the effort in the broad community in the conservation and sustainability universe. So this will be leaders from businesses, nonprofit organizations, knowledge users, and decision makers who will help bring the assessment findings to life. Next slide. So specifically, Phil is our director, and we have a growing staff directly supported by Tessa Francis, who you'll also hear from today as the deputy director, and several more staff who've recently come on board. And our secretariat represents several different knowledge organizations, in universities across the US and also in Indigenous knowledge, leadership, and sovereignty. It's a really important group of people that's really here to help elevate and build off of what the authors are driving. And as I mentioned, we'll be announcing a group of a board of advisors later this month. Next slide. Of course, we also could not be doing this without funding and have had an incredible response from the philanthropic community, empowering this and enabling the work to continue. Really a rapid and strong response from multiple funders with diverse interests across conservation and sustainability. And we are absolutely and deeply appreciative of their willingness to quickly move to support this effort, keep it alive, and bring it to fruition. So a really important engagement we're seeing and continuing conversations with these key funders who are helping us really bring this work to bear. Next slide. So just to bring this to the next point and interface here with Phil, we have been bringing all this work together to conduct this first of its kind assessment. And at its core, we have very, very strong principles that we aim to follow to make this a use-inspired assessment, for it to be broadly inclusive, and for there to be accessible findings to a really wide range of audiences. From the beginning, we've had in our minds very solidly that the nature records assessment needs to be as much about listening as it is about analysis. And we've aimed to demonstrate that through the first rounds of public engagement that have happened and heading into this next one that is at an absolute critical time for us to listen to you, for you to help shape our focus, for you to help bring credibility and rigor and diversity of perspectives to this assessment, and for you to help us make sure this is usable, used, and lasting information. So this is a key time for us to have the chance to reintroduce you to this effort, to bring you up to speed on where we are, and to really open the doors even further, welcoming your input, welcoming your engagement, and being very excited for this next phase of the effort that's starting here today. So with that, I will turn it over to Phil.
Thank you, Heather, and hi, everyone. It's really nice to not exactly see everybody, but see your names. And I'm really thankful and grateful for you taking your limited time and spending it with us in the next few minutes. And I also want to add my thanks to Bernie for really helping us get this together. He's been a wonderful partner, and SCBNA has been just terrific. So thank you. And I want to recognize Tessa and Athena, who are also on the call, for doing all the work and making this all come together. So thank you. They do all the work not only today, but every day, really. So my job is really to dive into some of the details of what the nature is, how we're going to do it, and how we're going to make it have impact. Okay, next slide, Phil. Weird. It's kind of interesting. I won't switch slides. Okay, here we go. As Heather alluded to, our effort is really fundamentally rooted in science, but we're here today because it's also guided by communities, guided by the conservation community, stakeholder communities, tribal communities, really everyone. And our effort is truly enriched by public participation. And we're really fortunate to have an incredible group of authors. We have 171 scientists, researchers, practitioners that are all working together to generate this report. Ultimately, this assessment is going to be designed for people who just want to make a difference in the world, to make knowledge-based decisions for our environment and for people. And also to highlight what Heather also mentioned is that our work is really grounded in the philosophy that there are multiple ways of knowing. And specifically, we highlight Indigenous knowledge as an important body of knowledge that can contribute to our assessment and our understanding of the natural world. The work that we're doing is based in guidance that was produced by CEQ and the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. And you can follow that QR code if you want to see that. It's still online. I checked last night. Um, And everything we're doing is really based on connecting to the community, connecting to folks like you. We started in 2023 with a federal register request for information. That yielded 3,000 comments. At that time and subsequently, we've had a number of tribal consultations and engagement with the Native Hawaiian community, all of which went into forming what is the outline of the assessment. Originally, it was the National Nature Assessment, as Heather described, and that content has continued to evolve into what we have today. We've conducted over 75 public events, touched thousands of people from over 250 different organizations from 45 states that we know of. I hope we hit 50, even if we don't know it yet. So thank you again for being here and for leaning in all through this process. So our work is really guided by three basic questions. The first is what's happening? So what's happening in our ecosystems, marine, freshwater, and terrestrial? What are the status, trends, and future projections of lands, waters, wildlife in those systems? We're also interested in the status and trends and future of drivers of change to those systems, as well as human connection to nature. And then the next really guiding question for us is why does this matter? Why do these changes matter? Why do they matter for climate adaptation and mitigation? How does it impact cultural heritage, the economy, our health, and risk resilience and security? And then we ask, what can we do about it? So what we see these changes, we see impacts. So how do we make a change? We look at this in two ways. First is by examining a series of case studies and examples that are success stories. So these are bright spots across our country. How can we leverage those examples and expand those across the country? And secondly, we look for more in a forward-looking way, opportunities for new and improved policy and practices. All of our work is framed in the context of best practices and frameworks and scientific assessment, and we center climate change and equity and justice in everything that we do. And all this leads to a table of contents that looks like this. We have an introductory section that includes an overview of the whole thing, an essay on equity and environmental justice, and a chapter on frameworks and approaches to assessing knowledge. It's then followed by bright spots and a series of chapters that focus on these status and trends. And then we follow that with the benefits and impacts of changing nature to climate, culture, economy, human health, and nature risk, resilience, and security, and end with opportunities for nature. We will have an online publication of the assessment this fall, and that will be followed by a book version published by MIT Press, probably around the summer of 2027. So how do we do the work? Really, the work is centered around 171 volunteer authors who are generously spending time, a lot of time, putting together these chapters. The way we formed these teams initially was we started with a national call for authors while we were still a federal entity. These chapter lead authors then recruited and selected their own teams. So these are truly independent bodies of scientists, practitioners, researchers who are working together to assemble the best information and reach consensus statements about the state of our ecosystems and why it matters. Another key component of what we're doing is our technical support unit. This is housed at NC State University Institute for Climate Studies, and this is a team of folks that really support the authors by scientific editing and copy editing. They're developing our figures, making them understandable and cool, and they're really helping with our review coordination and quality control as well. And so that's a little bit of a kind of a 30,000 foot view of the assessment itself. I'm going to take a couple minutes and just talk about what's in the assessment. So what does a chapter look like? So every chapter is really centered around the idea of a key message. Each chapter will have 3 to 5 key messages, depending on the length of the chapter. These are high-level consensus statements that describe the main findings that the authors reached. These findings are emerged from the literature that's available in the area, as well as other forms of knowledge. Each key message includes an assessment of uncertainty. So it's very similar if you're familiar with the National Climate Assessment or IPCC, it's the same style. These key messages are supported by a section called the state of knowledge. This is where the evidence is presented, as well as research highlights that support those key messages. And there are obviously a ton of references. In fact, looking at some of the drafts that are emerging, I think one of the great resources of this whole assessment is just going to be the lit cited section. It's really an incredible compilation of material that really, I think, will be useful for lots of people. In addition to those elements, every chapter will include a background section, a section that highlights equity and environmental justice, as well as emerging issues. And so each of these chapters have been working to build out their content. And we don't have time today to kind of go through in detail lots of the different sorts of questions that these chapters will address. In fact, that will be the subject of the rest of the series. But I thought today I would tease a few of the sorts of questions that some of the chapters are addressing, just to give you a flavor of the kind of work that's being done. So, for example, in the chapter that's focused on marine ecosystems, I think there's really 3 driving questions that kind of are emerging in that chapter. The first is, how are U.S. marine systems changing across regions and across different spatial scales, and what are the dominant stressors shaping ocean and coastal ecosystems? And how do ecological changes in the ocean intersect with fisheries, communities, and economies? So it's kind of a flavor of one chapter. It's similar to the terrestrial chapter and freshwater chapter, I would say, in sort of the trajectory that they're taking. Slightly different approaches taken by the human connection with nature chapter. In this, they're asking, how do people relate to nature through their work, their culture, recreation, and care? And how do these relationships shape values, decisions, and subsequent stewardship? And how do connections differ across communities and across landscapes? And how have these changed over time? So again, a different flavor, but you get the sense of the sort of questions that this chapter is asking. And then one more example from the economy chapter. In this chapter, they're asking, how does nature support economic activity across sectors, and what economic risks emerge as ecosystems change? And then they look at a especially interesting section for me, which is, where are dependencies on nature poorly recognized? or undervalued, and what can we do to raise the profile of that necessity? As Heather said, everything that we're doing is being reviewed independently by the National Academy of Science, Engineering, Medicine. They have formed an ad hoc committee. They recently had a call for nominations. They're sifting through those nominations now and building their advisory team. That team and the ad hoc committee works under the board, apparently, of atmospheric sciences and climate. Our audience for the assessment is really focused on environmental policymakers, so people at federal, tribal, state, local levels who might wish to use this information to inform policy and management. Conservation practitioners, land and water managers, again, those folks who can take this information and use it to change or enhance the sort of work that they're doing. We're also targeting advocates and NGOs who work on climate, diversity, EJ, and health issues, business leaders in the philanthropic community who are really thinking about nature-based solutions to the pressing problems of our time, and educators, journalists, and students, anybody who really engages with nature society issues. So we're really kind of seeking an audience that's not a technical audience necessarily, but those who are going to be able to use this information to make a change. And how do we envision making a change, especially since we've moved from being embedded with the federal government to now an independent, non-governmental entity? So we view that there are a number of different pathways to impact. First is we're working with partners to look at state-by-state strategies, to look at each state, look at the issues that are out there and developing products that can help policymakers and managers address the issues that are relevant in those states. And this will involve lots of coordination with folks on the ground and people who have expertise in each of those states. So this is a big, I would say, aspirational desire, but there are certainly a number of folks who are ready to work with us on this, and I think this is really an exciting opportunity. We've developed some partnerships, notably with the Association of Science and Technology, to really bring this assessment to life in pop-up exhibits and programming and science centers, zoos and aquaria, even hospitals around the country. And as Heather said, we're really excited about collaborations we've had with artists who really come at this information and this topic from a really different lens from scientists. Last September, with our collaborators, Luisa Gloria, Eileen Castanetto, and David Hassler, there was a companion to the Nature Record, that a poetry anthology that was published, The Nature of Our Times, which really brings a whole new lens and vision to the work. What's exciting about this work, and what I loved about it, was that the poets were prompt with very similar prompts to what the scientists had. And so it's the poet's answer to the questions of what's changing with nature, why does it matter, and what we can do about it. And similarly, a youth arts contest that was run by our partners at the BioSeek Creative Action for Conservation organization. They really, I mean, it's just amazing. We'll announce the winners soon of this contest. What they generated is just absolutely spectacular. They were in the same way prompted to really interrogate what's changing with nature and why it matters. And I was blown away, and I can't wait for you all to see it. And now, just in more detail, I'm going to turn it over to Tessa to talk about where we're going next with all this work.
Thank you, Phil. And Hi, everybody. And I just want to add my thanks for all of you for being here and for leaning into the nature record. I've been monitoring the participant list as you've all been arriving, and I'm just really happy to see you all. I'm very gratified that you're here. So I'm just going to bring us back briefly to where we are now and what happens next. So as Heather mentioned, we are really moments away from sending the draft report out for public comment and peer review. And following that period, authors will go back to work, taking in all that feedback and revising their chapters in response to develop the final version released later this year. So I just want to pause and just point out that a really important thing embedded in there, which is that your comments, you being the public, submitted during this public comment period will be passed on to the authors. And yes, I saw a question in the chat. Even comments by Canadians can be passed on to our authors. So this is a really, really vital role that you play. And I literally will be taking the comments that you submit online or that you submit in person and transcribing them and passing them on to the author. So this is a real thing. So what does that public comment period look like, and how do you get your thoughts into the hands of the authors? So if you could go to the next slide, please, Bill. So you have really two primary ways to share your comments. You can use your voice. You can share your comments verbally, or you can provide them in written form. The verbal comments can be provided at at a webinar. As Bernie mentioned, the Society for Conservation Biology North America is hosting a series of webinars. And we'll also be going on the road. We're going to be going on tour around the country during the public comment period and holding live events. And so you're invited to join us at those and provide your comments there. So that's how the verbal comments work. And then the written comments can be submitted on our website. So let me just take you through some of those details. So after this session, and then we have one more intro session later this month, SCB North America is going to be hosting the Nature Record in a series of webinars where you get to hear from the people actually doing the work to write the assessment, the authors. So authors representing the chapters will introduce their chapters, give overviews, and then spend most of the time in those webinars engaging in dialogue with you, with the attendees, where you can ask questions, you can share your thoughts on what you think should be included in those chapters. Registration for those webinars will be through the SCB North America's website, and Bernie's going to share that link at the end here today. At the same time, during that public comment period, you will have the opportunity, if you are a reader, to read the entire chapter drafts and submit written comments. And that opportunity is going to be found through the naturerecord.org, our website, our nifty public comment portal being developed by Ode Partners, who we've been working with to develop our website and digital platforms and communications more broadly. And you can do this as an individual, or you can do this as a collective if you're a member of a group or an institution and you want to compile comments as a group and submit them representing your organization. You can do it that way too. So that public comment portal will be open on our website at the end of February or beginning of March and stay open through May. And as I mentioned, we're also going on tour, holding in-person public engagement events around the country. Nature Record staff and authors will be hosting those events, and we'd really love you to show up and say hi and add your voice to the mix. So if you want to stay tuned to hear about all the webinars and the tour dates and be alerted when our public comment portal goes live, head over to theNatureRecord.org and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll be alerted about all these opportunities, and you'll even get some bonus poetry material from Phil on occasion in that newsletter. Okay, next slide. So as you've heard and as you've seen on the timeline, we're really just getting started. But this is a really important time, a really important moment when we truly want to engage with you. We really want to hear from you and have conversation with you to help develop the nature record. We're super grateful that you're here today, and we hope that you continue to show up and join us and come with us along on this journey. So I think that we get to use the rest of this hour for questions and comments. So if you have a question or a comment, please post it in the chat. There's already been some comments and questions. Thanks so much. And I am going to pass the mic over to Athena Bertolino, our outreach and engagement lead, to shepherd us through this discussion. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Tessa. And yeah, I echo what Tessa said. Please use the chat feature. This time, the last 15 minutes here is now open for everyone to chime in with any questions that they have. And we have a few that have come in. So let's start with, and I will throw this out to Phil and Heather and others. You mentioned companion products as part of the nature assessment. Could you talk a little bit more about some of the ideas and what's in the works around companion products?
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, in addition to the ones that are in play right now, so the first one was the poetry anthology that I mentioned, The Nature of Our Times, and the arts contest. We are exploring a number of different opportunities to have similar sorts of arts-based products that highlight the people's relationship to nature, again, what people see changing and why it matters. So those will be coming soon. We're in active discussions with a number of different folks from different arts disciplines, and so we'll hope to roll some of those out soon. In the realm of policy, we will generate essentially bespoke derivative products from the assessment itself that are focused on needs of policymakers in specific places. So these will be starting this summer. We'll be in discussions with policymakers and managers and begin to generate synthesis of the information from the assessment that bear directly on the issues that these folks have. There is another suite of products that we are beginning to develop that are focused on informal and formal educational opportunities. So informal, I mentioned, where we're targeting especially science museums with our partners at the Association of Science and Technology Centers. We're also hoping to develop pop-up installations for hospitals. And in terms of formal education, we have started a collaboration with Esri, where we're generating something I'm really excited about. So this is going to be a nature atlas, and it will be embedded in our website with the assessment. So when you're going through the assessment, let's say you come up with something about the importance of green space in cities, you'll be able to look at maps, interactive maps of green space in cities. You can zoom in where you want to. And then we are developing a whole set of curricula that are linked to that tool and other sort of products that we have. So we'll have K through 12 curricula that flow from this as well. Those are just a few of the things that come to mind right now.
Great, thank you. Next question is, will you be interfacing with state wildlife agencies in any capacity?
Yeah, we've had some initial discussions with state agencies in a number of fronts, especially after we left the federal government. And we're really working with a group called the National Caucus of Environmental Legislators, as well as a number of NGOs that have active state level teams. And those will be our primary ways to interact with the states. We think that that makes the most sense because people who are on the ground in the states have those trusted relationships and connections to folks and supporting them as they move forward with their work.
Great. And on a similar vein, in terms of in engaging folks in different levels, there's a question about will you be engaging localities or more localized efforts in monitoring changes to nature in the future once the assessment is out?
That is a really interesting question since it sort of asks more broadly, we're doing an assessment which is looking back in time, mostly assessing status and trends of ecosystems and its impact on people. And the question is really, are we going to engage or work with those who are collecting data to monitor those changes moving forward? And the answer is we don't have plans to do that right now. It's not really within the purview of what we're doing, but I think we would have ideas of how to support those who wish to do that. And so we would certainly welcome opportunities to talk to folks about what they're trying to achieve and how to do that. I think one of the really exciting things for me about this is how we're really working to break down silos around different kind of elements of solutions space and the monitoring space. So for instance, I used urban green space before as an example. So just to carry that further, there's lots of reasons why we might wish to have urban green space, to have diversity, biological diversity within cities, for example, to support fish and wildlife populations. But it also has really positive impacts on human well-being. It also has positive impacts on the level of contaminants and water quality. And so there's lots of different reasons to monitor and work in those spaces. And part of, I think, what we'll be able to help people with is look at nature-based solutions and help inform monitoring that would allow achieving multiple solutions to multiple problems simultaneously.
Great. Let's see. There's been series of questions that I'm going to lump around the framework and frameworks that have been existing frameworks that were utilized or being considered to create the framework for the nature assessment itself. Are you able to talk a little bit more about the framework that was used and how it ties potentially to or builds off of other existing frameworks? Like one of the ones that was mentioned was the planetary boundaries framework out of the Stockholm Resilience Center.
Yeah, the planetary boundaries framework and some other frameworks, I would say, kind of permeate the assessment throughout. Like obviously that work has been fundamental. I mean, not only that, but other sort of framework types papers, and they're there. Like you can see their influence directly and indirectly throughout the assessment. We decided not to adopt a single framework like that for this assessment, specifically because it was the first assessment. And the diversity of topics that we covered meant that it was, I think, difficult to adopt a single framework that works for all. And so as a solution to that, we actually have a chapter, which you probably saw fly by as I was talking, called Frameworks. So this really talks about the different framings that are out there, which chapters use different framings and why, and how they can work together in order to support the overall assessment. So we didn't use that one specifically. Um, and different chapters were drawing on multiple frameworks that were appropriate to their discipline. So, for example, the economy chapter drew on frameworks related to ecosystem services, and that was slightly different than the health chapter. which did draw on ecosystem service framings, but also use other framings as well.
Great. And next up is a couple of questions around data and data usage, I think both going in and coming out the backside. So one question, other than the public engagement period, are there other opportunities where additional data or information can be contributed to the report itself? And then sort of the other end of that, is the assessment going to be included or become part of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility data set or any other existing data sets?
I feel like I'm talking a lot. Tessa, do you feel like this is a good one for you to chime in on?
All right, you know what? I'm so embarrassed. I was monitoring the chat and writing responses and I didn't hear the question. I'm so embarrassed. Sorry. Can you say it again?
Yeah, I can repeat. This one is a question on the data, both going sort of into the report and coming out the other side. So other than the public engagement period, are there other opportunities for additional data or information to be contributed to the assessment? And then the back side of that, will the assessment be included or become part of the Global Biodiversity Information Facility data set or any other existing data sets?
Okay, thank you so much. Sorry. Yeah, so in terms of inputs, obviously as an assessment, our authors are doing a broad landscape scan to bring in and compile data from all sorts of different sources. So, and we're seeking those contributions. And so if you, particularly once the draft is released and during the public comment period, you read the chapter and you see, oh, I have an opportunity to point towards a database that's missing, or I have access to data that's missing. Absolutely, that would be something that would be important and we would really welcome as a contribution during the public comment period. And the best way to do that would be through the public comment portal or at one of the events. But the portal on the website will be a great place to submit that. In terms of outputs of the data and their contributions to larger sources of information, we are adhering to really high standards for making the metadata from the report publicly available and accessible. All of the information included in the assessment will be made available with release of the report. And that will be a moment where there will be an opportunity to see how the products from the assessment can contribute to larger efforts as well. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for that question.
One quick answer. It won't be quick actually, because I'm going to say, Heather, there is a question about engaging the private sector organizations, and I wonder if you could say a couple words about engaging business and other communities.
Absolutely. So, absolutely critical communities to engage. Thank you for bringing that up. As I mentioned, we'll announce our advisory board later this month, and several members of the advisory board are from private sector organizations specifically to help us engage that community further, to have their direct insights into the content, but also into some of these additional companion products that will help translate the findings to the business community at large. Also, some of our authors, I believe, are in private sector organizations as well as nonprofit organizations. So they are also contributing directly to the census assessment findings. So very, very important community. Thank you for bringing it up. And we continue to be open to other opportunities to engage with businesses if they're interested. So please reach out if you have specific opportunities and ideas there.
Looking at the time, I feel like we should turn it over to you, Bernie.
Sure. So I guess we're at the tail end of our session for today, and I just wanted to end with a couple of quick thoughts. The first is just thanking everyone for taking the time to be here today and for our presenters for taking the time to present during today's session. As a reminder, we will be hosting 5 more feedback sessions throughout the next couple of months. The registration links for those are all live on our website, so you can start registering for them now, although additional information for each of the sessions will be added over the next few weeks. We will also have another overview session in a couple of weeks in case you're interested in sharing news about that with your networks. And the recording for today's session will be available on the SBNA website and on our YouTube channel a few minutes after today's session is over. And then if you can go to the next slide, Phil. And then the last thing I wanted to mention for everyone is that SCBNA will be hosting our biannual North American Congress for Conservation and Restoration. We're changing the name a little bit for this year, with the Society for Ecological Restoration on July 12th through 16 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I strongly encourage everyone to attend this conference. I think it's going to be a great one. There's two big organizations hosting it together for the first time. And I think our theme is really reflective of the work that's being undertaken by the Nature Record. And that theme is conservation and restoration for people and nature. I will also mention that a couple of today's presenters will be at the conference, perhaps at a plenary session or two. So that's a bit of a teaser for those who might want to be in attendance. And that's it. I will pass it over to Tessa or anyone else from the Nature Record in case you want to have a couple of quick ending comments as well. But otherwise, I look forward to seeing everyone at our next session.
I think we're just at the top of the hour, and I just want to add my thanks to everyone. We really appreciate your participation today. It really means a lot to us. If we didn't get to your questions, I put in the chat. Please feel free to reach out via our website. That's probably the best way to get to us. I won't lose the email then. Our website is thenaturerecord.org, and there's a place to send, questions or whatever. So please feel free to do so. And I hope to see you at the later sessions. Thank you. And thanks, Heather and Jane, Tessa, and Athena for really being here today and supporting this effort. And of course, Bernie.
Thank you, everyone.